Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast with Borg, Betz, and a baller.
Welcome in, you beautiful, beautiful people. It's Wednesday, May 7th, Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni, and I'm joined by Matthew Betz and Mike Wright.
How's it going, boys? Excited to talk some Dynasty today?
Yes.
Yes.
That's the topic? That's what we're talking about.
We are.
I figured we do IDP, tight end premium, points per first down,
Betz.
super flex, double
Whoa.
kicker.
Super duper flex.
That's the content of today's show, so that will appeal to for listeners.
Betz, there are people right now that heard you start that sentence, and they were getting excited every single time you added on something else. So shame on you for not thinking of those four people.
How
That's
did
your thing. That's cool.
How'd your rookie drafts go, guys?
Oh, really good.
Good. I mean,
Yeah.
You got the guys you want. Did you make any trades?
I was moving and shaking throughout my drafts. I'm trying to think of like the best. We talked about it with Jason last week.
You traded the 101.
Traded Genty.
You traded Genty
Yes.
for what?
What's
And-
up, Mike?
Well, I mean, Mike, if you could go back and do the podcast a favor here and download and listen,
No.
maybe we could get some good ratings. but I talked about it with Jason and Kyle last week. Somebody approached me when I made it clear. I was like, hey, the 101 is available if anybody wants to make an offer before I took Genty. And somebody DM'd me and said, yeah, what's the asking price? And we kind of got back and forth. Ended up being the 101 Terry McLaurin and a 27 first for Bijan, CeeDee Lamb, and a 26 second.
Okay. So Genty and a first plus Terry, and you got say it again? Bijan,
CeeDee Lamb,
okay,
and a 26
All right.
second.
Yeah,
So-
I don't blame you.
Fun. I mean, the league was shooketh when that trade went through.
That's a big boy trade.
That is.
Yeah. And I had immediate, that feeling that you get after a trade when you're like, did I just screw this up?
No.
And
What's that like?
That's how I felt because of the Genty could be incredible. The other person was like immediate regret. And when both managers kind of have this like little short panic time, it generally means it's a good trade. So
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes. But I thought rookie drafts were good. Lots of interesting, I feel like there wasn't a lot of consensus in the pick 15 to third, fourth round range. Like once you got
Sure.
past the top 12-ish guys, I saw stuff all over the place in mine. So yeah, interested to see how you guys did.
Yeah, in Dino Jr., the league that we are all in together, I had a bunch of seconds, and I think there were a lot of players in that first range of, pick 13 to 18 that I think you could have good value. Some people needed running back, and so they reached on the running back. So, I was a Besh boy. I had to
Yeah.
represent.
Imagine not being.
Yeah, apparently Mike and Jason didn't want him enough.
Yeah, we did. Yes, we did. We just couldn't move up. We got nothing to trade.
They did get Jalen Noel, so there is like a little bit of my heartstrings. Like, well, I kind of love that
Straight
player.
up. I'll go best for Noel.
So I'm in a draft still. We delayed it a week because we had somebody that was like out of the country, and we were like, okay, we'll delay it a week. And so we just finished the first round. This is kind of delayed from everybody else. So I've had a week's worth of information of being in drafts, and now I'm in this one, and I was able to make a trade. But one of the players we're going to talk about today, who I think is the hardest player to rank in Dynasty, spoiler alert, is Chris Olave, is on my team, and I got offered from a couple different people in the first round, like, what do you want for Chris Olave? I need a wide receiver. And I literally didn't know what to do. So one of the offers was the 110 in a super flex for Chris Olave, and I just froze. I didn't know what to do.
I think I'd rather have Olave.
That's where I'm at, but both tight ends were still on the board.
I was going to ask who's available. So basically, you're deciding is it Loveland or Warren, whichever one you prefer.
Yeah,
Or
and
Olave.
it's just straight up that's what it is. So
That seems fair.
I
and
feel
I don't
like
have a strong take.
the responses that I have from people are literally all over the map. As in, you've gone this far with Olave, you need to write it out, or hey, just move on. Like, you don't have to have that stress in your life. So I wish that Dynasty was one of those formats where I knew exactly what was going to happen with a player who was a first-round wide receiver, and we'll get through some of the metrics. Like, he's been targeted more frequently on a targets per route run basis than Justin Jefferson 3 years into his career. So that messes with me. That messes with me a ton. So, Mike, I know that in one of the drafts you took Tesla at the very end.
Yeah, at the very, very end. Why not? At the end of a third round, take a guy who's a third round pick that got traded up for, that is an athletic freak, that will almost certainly do nothing in the NFL. But there was just a lot of those guys, man. All the third round wide receivers are, it's tough because draft capital matters so much, and the third round was like names that were not really on the radar to be third round picks.
Kyle Williams, Pat Bryant.
Exactly. And Tesla, like, well, Noel was a third. Like, so that one was good. But the other names were where you're just like, okay, this person was not on my radar, but they need to be now, because it's like, that Terry McLaurin, third round pick. I mean, now in hindsight, it's like, imagine a world where we collectively as Dynasty, just dumbos, let Terry McLaurin from Ohio State get drafted in the third round of the NFL draft, and we're like, I'm not very interested in this profile. Like, that's so idiotic.
It was bad, I remember, because he's in my data set as having the lowest targets per out run of anybody rounds 1, 2, or 3, but also he was like a special teams ace and had like 10 touchdowns that year, where he just had these monster performances, but we didn't know where to put him, and we didn't think he would go that early.
Right.
But all of those things you have to weigh. I remember a couple years ago, we were sorting through, like, how do we figure out a player 1 year into the career, 2 years into the career? What are they doing? We have to make that call on some of these rookies, and you can find all those ranks if you want. If you want to see Mike's ranks in the Ultimate Draft Kit Plus, you've worked on your startup rankings, which we will discuss today, and then you are in the process of statting out all 32 teams, Mike, right now.
That is correct.
Where are you at? What team are you on right now?
I go pretty much alphabetically, and I am done with 7 of them. So if you know the 8th team alphabetically, you know what team I'm on, and I can look and figure it out if you want. Huh?
That's my guess off the top of my head.
What was it?
The D's? I'm going to say Denver.
I was going to guess Denver.
Oh, you skipped Cleveland.
How could I? How could I forget?
So you're on Dallas, is what you're saying.
I'm on Cleveland right now.
Oh, you're on Cleveland.
Now, it's really easy to stat out that team in their quarterback room.
Yeah, real easy. We're going to have, we're going to have different projected starters for a team.
Yes.
Ugh.
Yep. So you can get all the projections in the Ultimate Draft Kit if you want to go there, ultimatedraftkit.com. But on today's show, we're going to be talking Dynasty Startup Rankings.
Dynasty Rankings.
I think I don't envy part of what you have to do, Mike, because people ask
someone's got to do it, Kyle.
I know, and you had to do it for the team. But rankings in general, I feel so bad because, we get tagged, you get tagged. Why do you have this player ranked so low, so high? And it's like, well, there's so much more to this player. Like, rankings, when you look at them, it's like, here's one finite number, and yet you're weighing risk, you're weighing all those things. So I do not envy the fact that people say, why do you have this player ranked at wide receiver 26 and not wide receiver 24? You're like, I don't know, brother.
It's good. I'm a seasoned vet now. I know how to handle these situations, how to explain your process.
Yeah. Betz and I got to finish our best ball rankings, and at least those have like a very clear end date of like when they're usable, and you're baking in upside, and you're like, oh, well, this player could be good, but then nobody remembers best ball rankings in like, October.
Right.
Hopefully
everyone.
not.
Yeah, hopefully not. So we're going to talk through a couple different categories related to startup rankings, and you're evaluating a lot of different things when you're looking at player, their contract, how young they are, the team situation, like the overall environment. Is this a good offense? But it's not really an exact science. And we've talked about before, in redraft, Mike is doing all the projections for 2025, this 1 year window. In Dynasty, depending on who you talk to, they might be thinking about a player for a long time and thinking like, oh, I have this player for the next 10 years, when it's like, a lot of those guys, I remember in a startup draft taking Corey Coleman a long time ago and thinking, wow,
yes.
I have
my boy Josh Dotson that year.
Oh,
that whole class was not good.
Is that the Treadwell year?
Yeah,
I think so.
That was the year where we all took different wide receivers, and then Michael Thomas was the answer.
We were pointing and laughing at everybody else, like, I got the wide receiver you wanted. So there is a little dance here of us thinking, okay, who is this player? And I think the sweet spot is 2 to 3 years of projecting who this player is going to be. Now, there are certain players that we will talk about today that we're going to view in just a 1-year window. Like, this player, if you're a contender, can help you, and that's okay in Dynasty. You don't have to think this player is going to last forever. But I put out a thread and asked the Foot Clan, who are the hardest players to rank in Dynasty? And before we get to our list of players, there's a couple on here that I just had to throw out there, like Brandon Ayuk.
Yep.
I have no clue. A couple years ago, I made a trade where I traded Brandon Ayuk for George Pickens straight up. I thought I've won and lost that trade 30 times. Like, I don't know what it is anymore. I guess I'd rather have Pickens now.
You traded away Ayuk, and then he had his blow-up season. Is that right?
That's correct. That's how you do it.
But now, Dynasty, looking back on it, it's like, the injury, he wasn't even good last year before getting injured. He had the holdout. So, yeah, that's a really tough one.
Mike, do you still have Ayuk?
I do not.
In the main?
Okay,
no. you got out.
I don't have him, but I do have Pickens, and like that was the trade. It was a broken Brandon Ayuk for. I was like, I gotta get. I'm trying to win a championship. I need another player, so I went and worked some things around it, and I ended up with Pickens.
Another common name I'm seeing is Breece Hall, and I get it because he's entering a contract year. You've gotten a valuable season. I will say that. You've gotten at least one. And yet, he's still young. He's younger than RJ Harvey, which I'm probably going to throw out age. Yeah, I'm going to throw out age stats about RJ Harvey forever.
Oh, man. This guy.
Just because it's fun. But, I mean, Breece Hall, like, what do you do with him? I think for a roster, someone feels like this is a high-end RB2 for my team. But people, if you want to trade, are saying like, hey, he's in his last year. I don't look at him that way. So Betz, like, how do you feel about Hall for 2025? And then is he going to get a big boy contract extension somewhere?
I mean, the answer to that question, I think, comes down to how he plays this year, if we're being honest. The concern on Hall is that right now the vibes are not good because of kind of the general coach speak of leading up to the NFL draft. There was all this stuff about, this is a 3-headed committee. We want to use all 3 backs. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing, but that's kind of how the new coaching staff is talking about it. And when it is a new coaching staff, you have to at least give a percentage possibility that will happen, because we haven't seen this staff with this player and kind of really understanding how that's going to go. That said, I still think he's definitely the most talented running back on this roster. And the offensive line, I mean, they've been trying to fix it for years. Maybe they did fix it. It will be very run heavy with Justin Fields. Their only weapon really in the pass game that you can kind of rely on is Garrett Wilson. I know they've got some other like ancillary wide receiver 4 talents in the NFL, but they don't really have another dude. So I think it's going to be very run heavy. So even if the pie is split up more than we would like, I think Breece Hall is still going to get plenty of opportunity. So he's so tough because you could tell me that, his efficiency still fell off again, and all of a sudden next year we have a conversation where the metrics don't look great and you're very concerned. I could also see a scenario where the offensive line is better than we think. Justin Fields is opening up tons of running lanes for Breece Hall. He's better than you realize. He kind of reminds you of who he was a couple years ago. I could see both arguments there. So to me, it's just trade value dependent on Hall is kind of where I stand for Dynasty. I will say for this year, there's a lot of players I prefer over him. When we think about like redraft or best ball ranks that go around him, I haven't taken him a ton yet. We'll see if that changes.
I would just like to remind people, look, where he was being viewed, he's going to be graded on a different curve than other players. I understand that. I get it. But the like over the course of the 3-year career, 2.5 really, because you have year 1 where he only plays half a season, tears the ACL, but he's scoring 15.1 points per game. The next year it's 14.9. In the full season, the RB4, he's, padded the numbers with a bunch of receptions. this past year where everyone is just so done with Breece Hall. He went from 14.9 to 13.3 points per game. Like this was not a catastrophe where everything just fell apart. Now you want to factor other things like actually watching him, but I'm saying fantasy points, he was down 1.5. But this isn't he just completely cratered and went from the RB4 to like, well, he wasn't even a top 24 guy. He's a bum. It's like I don't know. I'm just hold on here for Breece Hall. You have that first half of his rookie year, very strong, comes back from the ACL, surprises all of us, and then just has a slightly down year. And which, like, look at the team. I mean, the whole team was atrocious. So I guess I'm a little bit more confident in Breece Hall for where he needs to be for rankings. And like there's not very many difference-making running backs, and Breece Hall can be a difference-making running back or just a real solid contributor. So, yeah, the curve is there when you're grading, but don't punt him off the bridge with Jason style.
Yeah, it's a team-level question for me about the Jets, about how successful they are. I was trying to find the stat. The last 2 years, they've been dead last in rush plays inside the 5. So in 2023, the team had 3 total plays that they ran the ball inside the 5. 3
That's
on the
wild.
entire season. And then last year was only 10. So it's just like, you're not getting any opportunities to make up the difference from some of these other running backs where, Dave Montgomery can be the RB2 for his team, but he's going to get those inside the 5 numbers that's going to boost him. So it's a team level conversation if you think Fields and the offense is going to be somewhat competent and that overall the team's going to have success with their defense. Let's take a quick break, and then we will jump into our players. All right, we're going to name some players that we think, man, I don't really know what to do with this player and where to rank them in Dynasty Startup. So I'm going to start with Chris Olave because I mentioned him at the top. He's about to be 25, entering year 4, and they just exercised his 5th-year option. We want more than 10 total touchdowns in 3 years, people. Like that's painful as somebody that has Olave in Dynasty and has had him in redraft as well. But on a per route basis, which it's how we judge wide receivers, right? It's the strongest thing we can say is like, what do you do on a per route basis? We talk about it with prospects, but 26% targets per route run is better than Justin Jefferson's career rate, and 2.21 yards per route run is slightly behind Jamar Chase's career rate. So those are really, really strong numbers for a player that this team has said, he's our guy. They've given him the 5th year, and I think we'd all say, based on their actions in the draft and everything else, they're comfortable with Chris Olave being their one. We're not comfortable because we understand the injury history and everything else. So, Betz, can you explain to us, I know you've done a lot of studies or stuff on the website about players that have concussions and what it's like for them coming back and how it kind of mounts over time?
Yeah, so the TLDR basically is like every subsequent concussion that a player is going to have, they have a higher likelihood of missing additional time. So basically, Chris Olave, if he gets a concussion this year, relative to somebody that's never had one, is more likely to miss multiple weeks. Now, every person is different. Every concussion is different. There's no like hard and fast, this is definitely what's going to happen, which makes the situation hard to predict. The other thing is like, there's studies that show like concussion history is a predictor for future concussions, but you can't really predict, on this play, he's going to go across the middle and take a hard hit. It's just football and it happens, right? So yeah, basically I have a yellow flag up for Olave. I think it's a valid concern. Last year was not good. And when you have him in the same season, that's when the concerns really start to pile up over time. We've seen that with guys like Tua back in the day. What's Rule 86? I'm blanking on his name.
Or Jordan Reed.
Jordan Reed. I almost said Jaden Reed too.
Yeah.
Jordan Reed. So yeah, it's a valid concern for sure. Now, I haven't seen like a startup ADP recently on him, but I know that like in the best ball world, nobody wants Chris Olave. So I feel like you can make an argument that those concerns are kind of already factored in with Olave, that we don't want to double count when the price reflects it. But yeah, definitely no question about it. It's a concern.
We have him at wide receiver 27, and I'm looking at a couple other sites. It's pretty much on market with where he's going. I'm seeing wide receiver 26, 28 in some spots. But it is kind of this no man's land where he's grouped with certain players that are older, like Terry McLaurin's right there next to him.
Mm-hmm.
And we like the offense, and Terry just had a career season, while you're lumping in some younger guys in that, section too. The problem is we're betting on an offense that has to remake itself, and we do like that Kellen Moore has been up-tempo. He's been top 10 in neutral pace every year as a coordinator or play caller. Like, I like the infusion for this Saints offense, because 2 weeks into the season, we were like, man, the Saints are going to roll this year. And then the rest of the year was a train wreck for that team. But Olave just hasn't had opportunities. Guys, he has 5 total receptions inside the 10-yard line in his career. 5. Here are some players with more in that time span. Trenton Irwin, Mecole Hardman, Michael Pruitt, Johnny Munt, and Russell Gage, who I'm pretty sure hasn't played in the league in a couple years.
Oh, my gosh.
What a list.
Johnny Munt.
Johnny Munt is
you know who's
loving
going to change that this
family.
year, Kyle? Tyler
Say it
Shuck.
again?
Tyler Shuck's going to change that this year. Maybe.
It seems like he's going to be the guy. It's not going to be the rat tail, I'll tell you that.
That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your advice on Olave, Kyle? Are you buying at price? Are you trading for him? I mean, you told us
guys
you don't
know
know
I'm
what
a
to
stubborn man. I mean, Mike could read me. You know I'm just going to go right back in.
Yeah, no, I know you're going to go in because the market is currently out.
Yeah.
That's why I know
That's
that
true.
Kyle is in.
I just don't want to trade him away for pennies on the dollar. I'd rather look at the hope of, here are the metrics behind the scenes that says they view this player as a 1. They're targeting him like a 1. And yes, there is the injury risk, and there's people yelling at me right now, he's going to get injured again. It's like, we're not predicting these things and saying this is going to happen when he goes over the middle.
He has wide receiver 1 production. He had over 1,000 yards as a rookie, and 1,004. And we're looking at, Marv and Rome, and we're like, these guys didn't even break 900 yards. And it's like, yeah, Olave did that. And then his sophomore year, which was disappointing compared to where we thought we were going to, go to the moon here with Olave. Because in 16 games, 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns. Like, 2 of his 3 years, he's been over 1,000 yards. The touchdowns certainly need to go up, but like, I don't know. I feel like the production that he has put up with his age does not match the sky is falling vibes that seem to be out there on Olave.
Yes.
I agree.
I'm going to give you one name to compare. So a player that went right after in the draft, Jameson Williams. If you think about their careers, it's like Olave had a really good rookie year, a great sophomore year, and then this past year with the concussions, and so the vibes are bad. Jameson's been the opposite. The vibes were terrible the first 2 years.
Yes.
And then it was really good. So like it's weird when we think about fantasy of like the last thing we saw is how we feel. It just affects us a ton. So would you rather have Jameson or Chris Olave in Dynasty?
It's still Olave for me.
I'd lean Olave.
I do too. All right, Betz, give us a player that you don't know what to do with.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about Brandon Ayuk. I'm going to talk about his teammate, Ricky Pearsall, who already I was kind of surprised that reminded myself, I know coming out he was an older prospect, but he turns 25 in September, so not the usual second-year age that we see for some of these guys. But let's start with the good. First-round draft capital. We like that. He did flash really exciting upside to close the season. Week 17, he went 8, 141, and 1 on 10 targets. Week 18, 6, 69, and 1 on 8 targets.
He lost me $10,000.
Yeah, in best ball. Kyle needed Pearsall to not have a great game in week 17.
He had the best game of his career.
He had a career game. So we have a small end of season. Remember, last thing we saw when Pearsall was on the field is he was great. But it took a while to get there. And obviously, the whole gunshot situation needs to be added to context here. But the peripherals on him, as far as what we just talked about with Olave, like when you kind of go back to those peripherals that remind you of how talented a player is or isn't, they were not great with Pearsall. 14.4% targets per outrun, 1.31 yards per outrun. Those are all super average to below average numbers. And coming out of college, remember, he was not the cleanest prospect, at least analytically speaking. He played 5 years in college. He didn't really have like a true dominant season until his last one at Florida. So we're talking about a late breakout that's older, that, you know, kind of is in no man's land. At least that's how I see him, as far as I don't know how good he actually is or isn't. But the situation is great, right? We like the Niners. We like the play calling situation there with Shanahan, and Debo's gone. So there is opportunity here, especially if Ayuk takes some time to come back from his ACL injury. So I find myself kind of stuck on Pearsall, where I can see the path where this works. I also can see a path where it's like, man, you know, he's not the guy we saw in week 17 and 18. It's probably somewhere, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. And what is the correct price on him in startups and trades? I just have no idea.
Who do you think will lead the team in targets this year, the 49ers? Because we're not going to say Ayuk. We're just going to say put him to the side right now. We'll figure out injury stuff. But, like, would you project Juwan Jennings to be that guy?
I think it could be Kittle.
Yeah. If I get to take a sidestep, I would say Kittle. But if you're like, okay, no, it has to be a wide receiver, then Juwan versus Ricky is that one. That one is wild, because you had Juwan had that surge in the middle of the season, and then it finished very poorly. Like that's my memory of it. Did he have, you know, like, well,
he had a couple of games here and there, but it definitely tailed off from that.
Like Pearsall is finishing on a high note. It's like Juwan Johnson, it did not. So it's like, well, did a transition happen? Did they see something of Ricky Pearsall, their first round pick, is going to be the guy? So I guess I lean Ricky between those two.
The box score wasn't great for Jennings, but he still averaged.
I call him Juwan Jennings
still averaged. Let me see here, in the final weeks 10 to 18, 9 games, 8.6 targets per game. So it wasn't like he had like one random blow up one and then kind of fell off. Just the yardage totals weren't there for whatever reason. You know, wasn't scoring touchdowns, but he did have pretty sustained, legit volume earning ability. Juwan Jennings did. So I don't know, man. It's tough.
If whoever picked Pearsall in their draft got him in the second round, okay, and because he was a surprise first round pick in the NFL, but in dynasty drafts, I feel like there wasn't like this surge of like, okay, we got to go after this guy. So whoever's playing with Pearsall is playing with house money right now. Of like, okay, I can see who this player is going to be. Hopefully, he can be a wide receiver 3 flex, and that's where we have him at wide receiver 37 in the consensus startup rankings. And I think it's fine. There's just a certain point in startup rankings where it's like, this is no man's land. Like, you know, we have Brandon Ayuk in the same territory because we don't know how he's going to respond. Matthew Golden's in this territory because, well, we don't know what he's going to be in this offense. So it's really hard to make a firm stance of like Ricky Pearsall is going to be more valuable than Matthew Golden. But I think the opportunity is there for him to potentially be the one, right? Like he could lead this team in targets, which is, it's hard for me to say that about Golden.
Yeah, he's in no man's land feeling right now, but the opportunity in front of him is about as it's very strong to go in. There's the number one wide receiver is unlikely to be there at the beginning of the year. Then their number one wide receiver is unlikely to be at full strength until maybe the second half of the year. You're a first round pick. Like, it's the world is right in front of him. So I like the bet on him, but you don't feel really confident with the bet.
Think about a year ago when he was drafted in the landing spot. We're like, man, so the Niners traded up for this guy, but is he going to get like much playing time and targets? And then he gets hurt. And so like a year ago, you would have looked at Pearsall and be like, okay, I just don't see the path. And I think this is a good case point for us to say, hey, bet on talent. If you like the player, the opportunity will clear itself up. Like, nobody would have thought like, okay, here's everything that's going to happen a year from now. Debo's gone and Ayuk's hurt.
Well, the
probably could have bet
being
one
hurt,
of them.
that part I didn't know, but it was like, Debo, come on, guys.
One of them was going to be gone.
Yeah, like either Debo or Ayuk will be gone.
Right. If you took Pearsall in a rookie draft last year, you did it with the understanding of like like in his second year, that's when they're going to use him, because it was clear that they were in some cap situations. They got to figure out how to pay Brock Purdy. Like one of Debo or Ayuk is definitely going to be gone, and obviously now we have that. So if you predicted that situation, you were right. Now you have a chance to either stick with it, like Mike's saying, or if you're not a Pearsall guy, cash out. You can probably still get something pretty valuable for Pearsall, especially as we get closer to the season.
Yeah. I would just want to wait and see at this point because, like we said, potentially could be the one for that team. All right, Mike, give us a name that you are having a hard time ranking.
So this one especially comes up because I have, like I'm statting out these teams, and I did Chicago, and so it's DeAndre Swift, who was one of the perceived bigger winners of the NFL draft. That's Chicago, who was connected to literally every high-profile running back name. They did not take anybody of note, and it's like, okay, he won there. But what does that actually mean? Where, like, are we setting up an ultimate honeypot bear trap here for us all to step in of it's DeAndre Swift. Oh, he's back with Ben Johnson. You're like, do you really remember how DeAndre Swift was utilized under Ben Johnson? Because the answer to that, so that was back in 2022, and he was a part-time player who saw, let me pull up the usage from the website here. He saw 28 in games played. He would average 28% of the running back attempts for the Detroit Lions with Ben Johnson as his offensive coordinator. Now, a 15% target share, like, that's glorious. That's so much better than having a 5% target share and the bulk of the attempts. We want targets because they're so much more valuable, but he was a part-time player. And then the Lions got rid of him. So I don't know what to do here with DeAndre Swift because he's technically he's with the team for 2 more years, or he could be. His contract is set up in a way that the Bears can get out here pretty easily and painlessly. But like, Swift we think he's the guy, but what if it's Roschon? Roschon is just kind of sitting here in the back. I wasn't the biggest Roschon Johnson guy, but the opportunity, while we're all talking about, Swift, big winner, Roschon, like, there's a chance that Roschon was actually the big winner, and he's the one who comes in, and he is Jamal Williams. Because the counterpart for DeAndre Swift that year with the Lions, that was Jamal Williams. That was the year that he had the insane workload, had all the touchdowns. Wasn't necessarily the greatest player, but they didn't like DeAndre. They didn't want DeAndre Swift running the ball. Clearly, they gave him sub 30% of the running back attempts when he actually got to play. So I don't know what to do with DeAndre Swift because he's been a top 24 running back. We have Kyle, you brought up the stat of only 4 running backs have finished inside the top 24 each of the last 5 years. And one of those guys is DeAndre Swift.
It feels gross.
It feels so bad. Yeah, but because he's finishing as a top 24 guy with, 11 points a game. So it's not killing you, but it's not necessarily winning you weeks. He's just around and getting some opportunities. So I do not know what to make of DeAndre Swift, where I think that a lot of people are going to get really juiced up here and go, okay, Chicago Bears, Ben Johnson's starting running back. And until, I won't feel confident that Swift is actually the guy until week 4. I'm not talking during draft season. I'm talking, I see a month of Chicago Bears football and I go, okay, Swift is the guy. Because I can easily see a world where Ben Johnson goes back to 2022 and says, I'm going to use this guy if he finds Roschon to be a more reliable running back. Because again, Jamal Williams was not setting the world on fire. He went right from that to the Saints of just done. It was over for Jamal. That was it. So I am very, very concerned about DeAndre Swift, both sides, because I'm trying to say I could be wrong. DeAndre Swift might be the guy. Maybe they patch things up, and Ben's like, okay, I see you worked on these things. You're going to be my guy. But I think it is a very, very scary proposition to make a bet that DeAndre Swift is the guy right now.
Do you think Ben Johnson, the way that he looks at his running backs, is the way that he did with Jay Willie? Because Jay Willie had one thing going for him. He had those pelvic thrusts. And that, when you get in the end zone...
Look, personality-wise, like, this man is a delight. But on the football field, it was like, he's just a guy. Where all of us fantasy players, like, look at DeAndre Swift. He has juice. But it was clear of, while, Swift has the athletic juice, he's not doing what he needs to do as a running back in the NFL for this team to keep putting him out on the field, and then they get rid of him. I am in circles here of what to do with Swift.
I have some thoughts. I know Kyle doesn't have any.
Please
have any additional.
Go for it.
Please save me.
So the thing I keep coming back to, and I talked with Kyle about Swift from like a redraft standpoint on Best Ball last week on the DFS show, but there's no question. You guys knew, we all knew, everybody in the NFL, fan, media, whatever world you're in NFL-wise, you knew Ashton Genty was the pick if he made it to 10. That was super clear and obvious.
Yes.
So they did not go into the draft with plans to have Swift as their guy, right? It just kind of fell that way, and I mean, Swift dodged 12 bullets basically to like get to this point. So whenever a player is thrust into RB1 on the depth chart at the start of the offseason, it's very, very risky to project that player to be the RB1 in 4 months or 5 months when the season kicks off, because a lot can change. I think they're live to sign J.K. Dobbins. They could sign Nick Chubb. They could also do what Mike said and give it a trial run and say, you know what, it didn't work out a couple years ago. It didn't work out again. And now you're stuck with DeAndre Swift. So for me personally, because I was concerned about Swift last year coming from Philly's O-line to Chicago, the offense had issues. I think the offense is going to be a lot better this year, but in the win totals market, it's still only 8.5 for Chicago. So there is a world that exists, even though I don't think a lot of people believe it, that they're just average to below average again.
Chicago? No way.
That's what the futures market, and that's not everything, obviously, but that's at least what they're setting the expectation at from a median standpoint. So to me, I see like one thin path where this works for Swift, and I see like 6 outs where it goes south. So for Dynasty, if we know the contract for next year is like pretty easily they can move on, and I would set the percentage chance that they either move on or draft somebody next year very, very high from Swift. So I'm saying for me personally, if I have him, you got super lucky in the NFL draft. You now have this kind of 3-month window where he's the projected RB1. I'm personally cashing out if you can get something of value for him.
Yes, I think the other alternative, let's say he's your RB3 or like a flex for your team, and you're in a competitive window, you're not saying you're a juggernaut or anything, then if he is the guy, you get to ride it out. If you're also one of those people that someone in your league will get RB thirsty in their trade deadline, and if you have a guy like that, you're like, okay, beyond this year, I don't know what he is. I'm not competing. It's like a great player to sell at the deadline if he's the dude. If this is a good offense, if you're ready to move on. Like, he has a wide range of outcomes for 2025 for us, which is crazy because it's been RB 24 seasons. Like, not great, but serviceable. And I think that's what is totally fine. I did find this stat interesting. He was dead last among all running backs with 150 plus attempts in zone success rate. Dead last. Both Detroit running backs were top 5 in that stat. And then he was 7th in 2023. I think he can do it. He's just not we said this before, he's not a running back. He's an athlete that runs the ball.
Right.
And he can work in the right system. I think we're just betting on a lot of different things with Ben Johnson and these new pieces on O-line and Caleb Williams and all these other mouths they have to feed that he just eats. Now, maybe it's one of those seasons where the rising tide lifts all boats. He gets 10 rushing touchdowns. He's the RB15, and you are super happy. Like, that would be awesome for Swift. We're just saying it's not the likeliest of outcome for me. Like, I just think the price isn't out of control yet. It could be.
I'm trading him. I'm making my official stance that I'm like Betz. I think that was perfect. If I can see one slim way that this goes right, and I can see so many different ways that it does not go right. So while I believe the margin that Swift could be great this year, I'm going to lean on trading him. And yeah, you could trade him right now, I bet, for something decent.
All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. All right, let's bring in some positivity, because I feel like the last segment was like, we don't know. We don't know all these players.
Well, I mean, Kyle, you asked us the question, the hardest players to rank.
Instead, I want to find the player that you are higher than the consensus. And I'm going to bring in the first player. This will be an easy guess from Mike. I mean, this is.
I already saw it, so just go ahead.
I'm not pandering here. He's my player so far, Mike, in best ball that I've said, draft him as much as you can. It's Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, baby.
He's only 24.6 years old. That's 4 months older than RJ Harvey, for those counting at home. And the best part about Walker is that we finally saw an uptick in the passing game. He was targeted on 24% of his routes. That was tied with Bucky Irving for 6th best among running backs. So he was used a ton in the passing game, and then we've got Clint Kubiak coming over, and they've talked about the run, and it seems like this team and the way that their identity is that it's going to be a lot of Kenneth Walker. He was number 1 in forced missed tackle rate. He's a good running back. He's a really good running back, and I think right now there's a number of running backs entering year 4 that we're all saying, like, I don't know if they get a contract extension. James Cook, Kyron's still working on it, Kenneth Walker. These are the guys that you're like, okay, do I go in further with these players or do I get out now? Because, you know, if you're one of those people with Rashad White last year, you're like, okay, well, year 3 is going to be fine. Like, you got to year 4 and now it's not pretty. So I think Kenneth Walker, 1, is young enough that hopefully he gets an extension with Seattle. I would love for him to stay there, but I think he can get a second contract elsewhere. And he's just really good on a per touch basis. He's always been explosive, and the fact that I use him in the passing game. So I think Kenneth Walker is somebody that I'm willing to trade for, knowing there's some risk, but I think there's life beyond 2025.
Mike, I know you have some positive thoughts here.
My thoughts on Kenneth Walker are well noted. You got to love the receiving work. I am pumped for the new offensive system, and hopefully that first round pick works out for them, you know, at least shores up a little bit of that offensive line. And I go back to the talent of the, like, number 1 in forced missed tackles. Like, his yards per carry, it was rough last year. Like, it's not where we need it to be, but the dude was getting just absolutely pummeled behind the line. Like, it reminded me of, you know, like those early Saquon Barkley years where, like, the guy, he finally gets a carry and he knows that it's going to be him versus the world. So he's just trying to hit a home run every single time instead of just, okay, I'm going to get 4 to 5 here. Kenneth Walker always wanted the whole thing. So hopefully we can get that mentality changed a little bit. Hit your home runs when you can, but also, like, Walker, we need you to get 5 here. Just go get us 5. Let's keep this drive alive. And with the new mentality of it being a run first offense, then that gives me hope that will become the path forward for him. And I think Walker gets an extension. Like, I think Walker gets a bag of money from somebody. I don't know if it's Seattle, but I'm going to keep buying the talent, and I think that the opportunity is matching the talent this year.
Yeah, I like it. Just real quick on Charbonnet too. Like, I feel like we kind of have this thing on our head.
No Charbonnet talk. Get out of here.
Well, this is going to benefit the Bone Zone.
I will allow it.
Okay, more Charbonnet talk. Basically, what I was just going to say is, like, I feel like we have this kind of in the back of our mind of, like, Charbonnet is always mixing in as, like, the RB2. It really has not been the case. When Walker is healthy and playing, Charbonnet is getting like 6 opportunities a game, 7 opportunities kind of here and there. It's not a committee. When Walker is healthy, he is a workhorse. And I feel like right now you're still getting, because you see these big games from Charbonnet when Walker's out, you kind of get this little discount in that aspect. So I'm with you guys. Walker's unbelievable talent, and I think the scheme is going to be perfect for him. They've already been talking about it already in this short offseason. You will hear a lot more of that drumbeat as the summer goes on. So I am definitely in on Walker at his price.
All right, Betz, give us a quarterback that is on my Superflex Dynasty team. That's the greatest thing that's ever happened.
I didn't actually know that, so now I feel bad for saying this, but Drake Maye Still not even 23 years old. Kyle,
I love Drake
younger
Maye.
than RJ Harvey?
Definitely.
Okay, good.
Definitely younger than Tyler Shuck, I'll tell you.
I mean, who isn't? Yeah, Drake Maye, obviously last year going into it, we were excited about the tools and like what could potentially happen, but the concerns were like, this team is going to be terrible. And they were. But even with that, we saw flashes of Drake Maye having really, really high upside for fantasy. Among quarterbacks that had 5+ games last year, he was behind only Jane Daniels, Lamar Jackson, Anthony Richardson, and Jalen Hurts in rushing yards per game. So we are getting a nice baseline of rushing production from Drake Maye, but he's not really viewed as that type of runner, but I think that's in the potential. Now, I'm not saying he'll be Jane Daniels or Lamar, but like, could he push Hurts? Could he push Anthony Richardson? I think it's possible in that rushing category. And you think about the weapons this year versus last year, it's night and day. Diggs obviously is not in the peak of his career, but he's better than what they had last year. Kyle Williams, 3rd-round pick. They invest in the O-line. They get the best, in my opinion, pass-catching back among the studs in the class in Travion, who's the best pass protector, which is also an issue for the team last year. Like, it all kind of lines up, I think, for Drake Maye to take a huge, huge step forward. You're seeing that a little bit, too, in the win totals market. Last year, they were 4.5. This year, they're up at 7.5. So they're going to be a lot more competitive than people realize. And it's really hard to put into words how much of an improvement the coaching staff is going to be. Last year, Rob Mayo was just way in over his head, like never really had a chance with the current situation. So with Vrabel, they're going to be competitive. They're going to win some games. I think Drake Maye is still undervalued, even though he has a lot of value. He's just undervalued based off what he could be.
Mike, you're the highest of all 3 ballers on Drake Maye in your startup rankings.
Yeah, I like him. I like the addition of the overpay, I will say, for Stephon Diggs. And I like the draft pick of Kyle Williams too. Of this, like, this guy wasn't on my radar, I admit it, but going back and seeing what this kid is all about, I think it's I don't know that it'll hit, but I like the attempt at least that they're really trying to surround Drake with the talent. And that rushing floor, it reminds me, back in the day we had, this is forever ago, so people may not even remember anymore, but it's like Aaron Rodgers used to give us like 300 yards on the ground. Alex Smith used to give us, a sneaky 400 to 500 yard season here or there. So, and when you get that in, and then you take the level up of throwing the ball, like that's when that's when you turn into Josh Allen. Okay, I'm not saying he's going to run like Josh Allen, but like Josh Allen's entire fantasy value to us early on was he's going to throw every other pass into the dirt and be super inaccurate, but he's going to run for so much, and he's going to run in these touchdowns. So I like calling the shot of Drake Maye being a guy who could jump into that upper tier. I don't know if I'm going to project that is it, but that ceiling case is there, where we often on this show, especially when we're talking about super flex and rookie drafts, and you're like, we're like, hey, guys, is this quarterback that you have to draft with the 101? I have to draft Cam Ward. Is Cam Ward really going to be a difference-making quarterback? I'm not saying he's going to be bad. I'm not saying he will be a failure of an NFL quarterback. I'm saying for fantasy football, a guy who is like, they're going to be more of the pocket passer. If a pocket passer is going to work, he has to turn into Joe Burrow. Like even Caleb, like, is there really the ceiling case where Caleb Williams becomes a top 3 fantasy quarterback for us year after year? And it's hard for me to see the path where Drake Maye, again, it's hard to see the path of a top 3, but I can at least, if I squint my eyes hard enough, I can see it. And you don't have to pay for Drake Maye, especially in like a single quarterback league. If you went and tried to get Caleb right now with all of the excitement, all the Loveland and Burden adding to this team, like Caleb Williams' price is super artificially juiced right now, where Drake Maye still might be a little pricey because he's so young, but it's not. The perception of Drake Maye right now is not that of Caleb Williams.
For sure. And I put a film cut up together because I was like, Betz was sharing these numbers. We were going back and forth, and I was like, I need to remember how these rushing yards accumulated, because it's a lot. considering he wasn't the starter till week 6, but he had the highest rush success rate ever by a rookie quarterback, meaning what they needed based on what the down was, it was the highest success rate ever, 65%.
And I don't, these were not designed runs, if I'm remembering it correctly.
There's a couple here and there, but a lot of it was they didn't spy. Like a lot of times the linebackers just weren't spying him because, well, they could just run through the line whenever they wanted to. But I feel like his pocket awareness, still a rookie, but where the open spots were, I mean, there's just some awesome runs there where there's more than just, oh, you got lucky there. This is going to be part of his bag. And Betz mentioned it, 35 yards a game. And even if that drops a little bit this next year, 25 plus is rarer than what people think. Mike, you have a name on here that you're higher on, and I feel like you've said this refrain a couple times. Like, I think I'm just going to be higher than the consensus. You said it when we did the review. You're a laddie boy.
Ladidi McConkey, a.k.a. Lad McConkey. And when you're talking about redraft, heading into like the very best bets you can make for historically versus ADP of like this type of profile who's done this, the best bets that you can make are wide receivers who broke out in year 1. Like the next year, they come through. So, like I looked at wide receivers that finished top 24 in a rookie season with next season data. I have 18 guys in this one. This is, I believe, since 2014. And it's the next year, those wide receivers, and I'm talking redraft right now, but those wide receivers who finished at least within a point or better of their expected points based off their ADP, it was 17 of the 18 wide receivers. Like, these guys come through, and I feel like it's the conversation around the Chargers. Yeah, they went and they got Trey Harris, but it was before the even draft was like, well, they got to get a number 1. And it's like I feel like we're in another Amon-Ra situation of like he's a slot guy, smaller. He's not the prototypical, and it's like Amon-Ra's a number 1 in this league. He's just not the number 1. He's not a Jamar Chase type of player. He's not a Malik Neighbors type of a player. But I think that Lad's skill set is perfection for the modern NFL, and the dude is just the guy is an absolute stud who once he was acclimated like a normal rookie, it took some time for him to get going. It took some time for Hardog and Giro to actually let Justin Herbert air it out a little bit. And as soon as they did, Lad McConkey is absolutely dominating from week 8 on. Wide receiver 8 in fantasy. He's a rookie. This is a rookie playing for a high T, want to run the ball, and he's the wide receiver 8, 9th in yards in that time, 7th in yards per route run. Like, he was truly amazing, and I don't think he's got the credit that he deserves of people doing the thing of, well, we're going to wait around to see who the true number 1 is for the Chargers. I think the number 1 is Lad McConkey.
I think when you look at your roster, you have certain players that you go, this is a 1. This feels like a 1.
Yes.
This is what a 1 is supposed to feel like in fantasy football. I look at some of these guys like, is JSN ever going to feel like a 1? It's like, part of it's based on his like body type.
Yeah.
That it's hard for us. But he was a wide receiver 1
We're
this
all
past year.
sizists when it comes to these wide receivers.
Like, for instance, Nico Collins. That feels like a 1.
Oh, yeah. Look at that dude. That's a man.
Yeah. Marv?
That's a man.
He wasn't a 1, but he feels like he's supposed to be a 1. Lad feels like, ooh, this is supposed to be a PPR option, and yet he was awesome. And you have him ranked as a top 10 Dynasty startup wide receiver. Andy does too, by the way.
All right.
So
all right.
I was shocked to see Andy that high, but I mean, we're only going to say great things. Betz, any last thoughts about McConkey?
I love him. He's great. Just to Mike's point, you mentioned how good he was down the stretch. We also kind of forget he played through a knee injury in the final month or so of the season too. So,
oh yes,
more context on that. I mean, he could have been even better. So, Lad's a stud.
Does that like tell us for sure he has the dog? Because he was awesome.
He was
goodness,
absolutely had the dog. Going across the middle, injured knee, he didn't care.
And the dog, in his first ever playoff appearance as a rookie, 9 for 197 and a touchdown, everyone. Like that, when you're remembering what happened last year and you go and look at the game logs, you get game logs for the regular season. You don't remember that he's in his first ever playoff appearance against the Houston Texans, and the dude absolutely balls out. Now, they needed to because they were trying to catch up, but that's an absurd stat line.
Yeah, I think it was week 17, his championship week. Was that against the Patriots where he went berserk as well?
Yeah, 8 for 94 and 2.
Yeah, I was like in my championship week with Lad McConkey, and I think that was like the Saturday game or something. But basically, I was like, I'm gonna win. I didn't win. Spoiler alert. but Lad made me feel really good.
Was that the home league that your snake bit?
Just doesn't work out. So
one of these years, Kyle. One of these years.
All right, I want to finish out the show with just a couple of quick hitters. We're just going to quickly name some guys in some categories, and I think it's helpful to at least clarify. You can do this on your own if you just want to create a category and say like, I kind of feel the same way these guys. But last year we talked about who's a stud we are quietly nervous about, and we brought up Tyreek Hill. I went back in the doc. I was like, okay, we whispered it in the bushes. We said, hey, there's just a little bit more here. It's not just age, but there's just other things going on. Apparently, we looked at cheetah years last year, too.
Oh, did we?
What he is in cheetah years. So 333 human years is a lot. But Tyreek, looking a year later, you feel nervous. The name I just want to bring up is Jonathan Taylor, of just saying the end of year 3 games was awesome. It was the 5th most rushing yards ever over a final 3 game part of a season. I mean, it was unbelievable, but also this offense is not going to function. He will literally die if they feed him the rock that many times.
It will be the last big year of Johnny Taylor. I'll jump in with, because it's like it's hard to know what to make of the why of what happened of Jonathan Taylor, 2 years ago is the consensus RB1 in Dynasty. Basically, you couldn't trade for Johnny Taylor at that period in time because the guy was electric. He was a Hulk on the field, but he was also just an absolute stud. And then last year, where yes, the end of the year was incredible. You're playing, 4 of those 5 games. I pointed out on the main show who he was playing. He was playing literally the top 5 picks in the NFL draft. So you do have to weigh that. But then the inverse of Kenneth Walker, where the end result of the fantasy year for Kenneth Walker felt disappointing, but the guy was talented. The guy was making defenders miss. He still had the juice. And meanwhile, and then Johnny Taylor here, of running backs with 100 or more carries. There's 46 of them. He was 40. Is this real, Kyle?
Yes.
42nd out of 46 players in forced missed tackle, 44th in yards after contact per attempt. Like this is what I mean of, this is weird. Like this is not the Jonathan Taylor that I think about in my head, but are we at the point now of the career of he's already, he's 26. The age cliff for most running backs where things start going south is 27, and he's dealt with so many injuries. So Betz, I'll throw to you a little bit of I don't know if you remember all the injuries that Taylor has dealt with, but like, are we just is it over here for Jonathan Taylor in terms of being the true stud, not the volume, as I think he'll get a bunch of volume this year, but him personally being the stud? What is going on here?
Yeah, remember he had the high ankle sprain a couple of years ago. This was like the Jeff Saturday season, if I recall correctly, the high ankle injury. And then
leader of men.
Wasn't Carson Wentz also on that team? Oh, what a crew. But late in the year, re-aggravated the same ankle. Then in the offseason, had the surgery. That's when the contract holdout saga happened. And it was like how much of it is the contract? How much of it is the ankle? Where is the truth? Probably somewhere in the middle. And he's kind of had these little incidences like pop up where he aggravates it. So there is a chance that his performance and maybe some of these underlying metrics do suggest that the same level of explosiveness or, how dynamic he is could be affected by the ankle. It's definitely possible. So So, yeah, I mean, I still think Jonathan Taylor is a really good running back. But I think the conversation here is like, do you think he could ever get back to what he was? And if you don't, we're not saying he's going to be bad this year. Like, he could still be the RB12 and be pretty good for you.
You can get a haul.
All of us, yeah, you can get a haul. But the question is, like, all of a sudden next year, if you're trying to forecast out a year or 2 years, like, what does it look like? And I kind of agree with Kyle. Like, there's some warning signs of like, hey, this might not be, Derrick Henry at 32 years old kind of thing. Like, this might be closer to the end than people realize, but maybe not. He's hard to guy to work through. But I agree, the trade value is still massive on Jonathan Taylor.
They could clean house this next year. Steichen gone, quarterback's gone, GM. Like, there's just so many other parts of this team that they've kind of been buying time. The third year in Steichen, third year with Richardson, where it could just be a full reset. I did get sent an offer where I need running back help, and someone saw this, and they sent me Jonathan Taylor for Marvin Harrison, and I declined it.
Okay, good.
I'd keep Marvin.
But it was tempting because my team really needed running back help, but this is Jonathan Taylor. But I think at the end of the day, if you trade him now, if you need to, you'll be able to get a good haul for it. All right, Mike, give us a name that you are nervous about.
All right, I am nervous what is going on with Jalen Waddle. We just say, the Miami Dolphins, but I am not nervous that Jalen Waddle is a good NFL wide receiver, but I am nervous now of 2 years back to back that not just, Jalen Waddle's injury situation of where he just seems to get banged up all the time, but the fact that the numbers just absolutely cratered over 3 years ago. He's the wide receiver 7. It looks like he is going to be an absolute dominant stud. It's going to be him and Tyreek. And then the production goes down 2 years. Combine that with Tyreek Hill's production going down this past year of like, who are the Miami Dolphins and how is Jalen Waddle disappearing? Like, I do think he's a good player, but how can you possibly be that good on this contract extension that he's on? And then you have moments in time where you're gone. You have vanished from the offense. So that's where my concern is coming in, of where, like, if you're holding on to Jalen Waddle and you get a year anything like the last two, it's over. Like the perceived value of Jalen Waddle in Dynasty to trade him, it could just be completely ignited. But he's also a good player, so like I would expect, I still want to bet on him to bounce back. But you are in a very precarious situation of what do you do with Jalen Waddle? Do you just sit and let the bag expire in your hands, or do you go be proactive and potentially miss out on some upside here?
It feels like Olave.
Sure.
Sure. Like in a different way, but just like, okay, I thought I had a locked in, top 12 dynasty asset, and now I'm scared that I'm just going to be left holding the bag. So you have Waddle higher in your ranks, and I think there's just more safety with Waddle, as weird as that is. But he got outproduced by Jonnu Smith last year, and that stinks.
What are you doing, man?
Dude, I loved Mike McDaniel in the first couple of years. Like, it was fun. He had the vibes were high in Miami. He has the joggers rolled up like midway to the calf. He's just having a great time. I'm putting this guy on notice, man. You knew Tua was out for half the season, and they still had like no game plan. It was just like, this is our offense. We're going to be terrible, but this is what we're doing. It's like the best play callers in the league work around those things, and it was just like, we're going to throw our hands up and hope for the best is how I felt like it went last year.
Yeah.
So I'm putting Mike McDaniel on notice. If he doesn't turn it around this year, like, honestly, I think he's probably gone after this season.
I think you're right.
He was sniffing his farts after the first 2 years.
Oh, 100%.
That's what he was, just huffing it over and over and over again, to the point where he's just like
hey,
breathing in some bad stuff.
You want to whiff of this? It's real good.
Eventually, I know nobody cares about their own brand. It doesn't bother them. Eventually, that thing's going to stink.
Yeah.
And it did. So hopefully he gets to stay around, but that team could implode. That literally could be a different team in a year.
Yeah.
So, all right, Betz, one more name.
Okay, let's talk about Mark Andrews.
Oh, gosh.
As many of you know, I've loved him for years. I will always love him. However,
I will always love him.
The warning signs are there. He turns 30 this season, and last year he was potentially like the most touchdown reliant player in fantasy, maybe period. PFF's model had expected 6.5. He scored 11. Andy pointed this out on an episode of the main show earlier this year, just talking about like, the receptions per game, the yardage per game. It's all coming down year after year. And then the touchdowns saved you last year. And if you had him, you didn't like feel how bad it got to a certain point. But really, if you take away 4, 5, 6 touchdowns, this is a player that you're not happy to have in your lineup at all. And the metrics do support it. So his targets per run and his yards per run have fallen off in 3 straight seasons, as did his routes per game in 3 straight seasons. So if we have a player who might not run as many routes as he used to, and he's not as efficient as he was, it's super, super thin for me on Mark Andrews. So I will always appreciate him for what he was for these past several years, but I'm nervous that this is the end as far as the Mark Andrews we know, especially considering, in the offseason they talked about maybe they move on, maybe they don't. Obviously he's here now, but
he's cagey. It was weird.
Yeah, they didn't really know what to say they didn't want to say anything. They just wanted to kind of see what their options were. But he's not under contract next year with Baltimore, and it seems like a very strong bet that he will not be a Raven after the season.
What if I'm in my TD only, tight end only league? Am I okay?
101.
Okay.
First pick.
God, his age is still fine when we look at our dynasty life cycle. But
it should be fine.
He doesn't feel like he's 30 though to us. I feel like he's with Kelsey in like the 34, 35 range.
Yes, yeah. I can agree with that.
I mean, he'll definitely get a contract next year. I'm not saying he's not going to play in the NFL, but just like, is he the same player he was? I don't know.
Oh, man. All right, well, it's just sad.
Yeah,
Thanks for bringing it up.
I'm bummed out, man. Thanks a lot.
And on that note,
I'm going to go find some stats that say he's going to be just fine. That's what I'm going to go do. That's going to do it for this episode. Next week, we'll be talking about rookies. So a little bit of a brighter picture at the end. I mean, everything's great for these rookies,
yeah, it
right?
is.
The range of outcomes, everything's great. So make sure you check out Mike's Dynasty rankings in the Ultimate Draft Kit, ultimatedraftkit.com. And we'll see you again next week.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.